All right, everyone, welcome to this month's workshop. Thanks for joining us. Today, rather, we're going to focus our time talking about how you can spend less time on bugs and more time on features through some of Sentry's new features and workflow automations. But first, just kind of want to brief you on some technical housekeeping. As always, if this is your first Sentry workshop, post your questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom. And if you see a question that's already been asked that you also want answered, just upvote it. Helps us consolidate them at the end when we get to answering. Second is we will definitely be sending out a timestamped recording of today's contents. You should have it in your inbox on Monday. So if you have to drop off or if you just want to rewatch it because you enjoyed it so much, we'll be sending that out next Monday. So stay tuned for that. Last thing, there is a one-question survey after the webinar. It's going to open up automatically in your browser. It takes a second to click one option. Really appreciate if you can answer it. It's going to help us make all of these better in the future. So today, let me just introduce you to our host. On the Sentry side, we've got Richard Propst. He's a solutions engineer. And we're joined by a customer and friend, Don Brown, who is the CTO and co-founder of Sleuth.io. Quickly walk you through the agenda, and then I'll pass it off to Richard for the stuff you came to hear. Oops. Introductions, we'll go through using a review list, a simple way to parse a list so you can solve what is actually urgent. We'll do some automatic Jira ticket creation. We'll look at project details, and then we'll hear from Don how he has used Sentry with Sleuth, and then here's some of the things he likes about Sentry and some of the things he wished that Sentry did or some feature requests. And as always, we'll wrap up with Q&A. So without further ado, I will stop talking and pass it over to Richard for the good stuff. Richard, take it away.
Great, thank you, Schaefer. Welcome, everybody. I'm Richard Propst, Solutions Engineer with Sentry, and today I want to go over some improvements we've made to help make your life better and easier as you're working with Sentry. So first, we'd like to start with the Sentry application monitoring pillars. These 5 pillars constitute what makes Sentry within your organization. And so we have error monitoring, which is where we come from. That's our bread and butter. Performance monitoring, which we've added recently and helps you understand where things are going slowly and where the customer experience may not be as optimal as you'd like. We are now telling you about your release health and how your velocity is going with releases and how those are performing over time and against each other. Of course, we're gathering all this data and surfacing that within our BI tool, Discover, so that you can slice and dice it and search it and organize it the exact way you like. And finally, because nobody lives on an island, we are allowing this information to be organized within your infrastructure and communicate back and forth with other systems via integrations. So today, what we're going to talk about is how we tie all of these things together into a single experience. And that is with the idea of workflow. And so if you take a look at the workflow overall in terms of what happens with Sentry, you integrate your SDK into your front-end applications, into your back-end services, into your mobile applications, and then Sentry begins to collect the errors and things that are happening within your applications. If you've configured these errors to fire alerts, we start sending alerts to you. Maybe this is via a Slack channel or some other notification channel, email, whatever you have. And then the team gets these alerts and figures out something to do. Do we take action on this right away? Do we just say, hey, I don't want to hear about this right now, come back to me in a little while? Or do I don't want to see this again, I'm going to delete this or filter this out. From there, of course, you figure out what you're going to do, how you're going to resolve this error. You commit this issue, and then we're free and we're off to do something else more interesting. So, this is a general workflow, and this is nice when by itself, but there's still a lot of manual work that we're doing here. And so Sentry has put a lot of effort into trying to help you automate a lot of this and take some of the headache out, because the scale can get overwhelming at times. So we will go into the product now. And, first of all, we live in a world where we're inundated by alerts and notifications. We're getting alerted by all of our applications. We're getting alerted by our build systems, by our metrics systems, and so on. And it's hard to make sense of what the signal is from the noise. What do we respond to? What action do we take? And to help, Sentry has taken what is the issues list, and which is the traditional view that you know and love, and added a new view in this, which is the review list. This is the only list that you need to look at. So what's the difference? Well, the issues list is going to show me everything that's going on within my projects, right? And when I go into review, we're going to focus now like a laser, like I'm putting on noise canceling headphones, and only focus on issues that I care about, I need to look at. And what are these issues? These are issues that are new. These are issues that were fixed but have come back. These are regression issues, right? These are issues that were ignored, but for whatever reasons, whatever setting that I had, they have come back and respawn from the dead, like some kind of whack-a-mole game, and become, something that I need to be aware of again. And to make life easier to manage these things, we've added this view and some search capabilities so you can find what you're looking for and what you're responsible for. So you'll notice my review list has this search, which is always something that's available to you within the product. And it's saying, hey, these are issues that are for review, and these are issues that are assigned or suggested to me or nobody. And so now I went from having 52 issues within my projects that I care about down to 8 for me to accomplish in the triage. So let's take a step and back and figure out like why these issues are here. Well, the new issues are going to be issues that we've never seen before. These are, as you would expect. And these issues will stay in these states for 7 days. And once they've been there for 7 days and have not been acted on them, we mark them as reviewed. But the new issues are ones I've not seen before. Then I have regression issues. And regressions are issues that I resolved, but for some reason have come back from the dead. That's important to take a look at. The ignored issues. These are unignored issues, are ones that I have selected to ignore for a certain amount of time, if you're familiar with that state, and they have been unignored for some reason. So let's go through this list and perform a little bit of a triage on this. So I'd like to start with this unignored issue first, because let's start with the unignored issue and see why that happened. So what I would have to do before within Sentry is click into each issue to get the issue details and see what that issue was about and why that issue was, why this issue happened. But now take a look at this. I have some hover over this that shows my stack trace. So we've introduced this concept of stack trace preview within the issues list and within the reviews list. And now we don't have to click into an issue anymore to see where this happened and why. This will make your review so much faster and easier. So I can come in here and expand the issue, the stack link, and I can see that where this issue happened within the context of the code. But check this out. I can now link your stack trace to your source code. Well, that's cool. Not only can I take a look at the stack trace within here, but now I can link that to my code within my source control and see exactly where it's happening. So why don't we do that real quick? When I click this, I'm invited to either use automatic setup or manual setup. I'm going to choose automatic with the magic Hollywood here. I have the URL for my code, and I will go ahead and enter that. and submit it. And now I have mapped this stack trace to the code within my source control. So if I hover over this now and click this review, I can open this line in GitHub, and bingo, I'm now into this and can review this exactly where it happens and exactly within the context of what is going on. So that's great. You know, because this was unignored, I actually would like to do something with it. So I'm going to go ahead and click into this issue, and I have some configuration here that lets me see who might own this. But I'd like to link this Jira issue and create a ticket and say, hey, somebody go take action on this. Somebody go do something with this. And so let's unlink this issue. And we will, I can go in here and I will get the create issue dialog. But oh man, there's a form, a big form that I have to fill out. And that would be okay if I was dealing with like 1 or 2 issues along the way. But if in projects, it's not unusual, especially like monolith projects, to see dozens. And if I have to fill out dozens of these forms, I'm going to lose my mind, right? I could do assignees and assign this to my colleague that's responsible, can make can choose a reporter, but I got to believe that there's something that I can do that's better for this. And so we have introduced a new idea around alerts that allow me to automate the creation of these Jira tickets. So I will first find a project, and let's go to R2R-. So let's take this Express one, and I'll go into the issue alerts, and I'm going to decide that, hey, when the new issue is created, when any issue is created, and let's say that I want to make sure that the environment is in production. So I might come in here and say, hey, when this is equal to production. And let's say that I really care about, this is a backend API, so I really care about when this is affected by a certain transaction. So I can come in and say, hey, when the message contains account, then what do I want to do? I have a number of actions, but now a new action that I have is I can create a Jira issue. I could also create an Azure DevOps work item as well from here. So I'm not exclusively tied to Jira. So now I want to create a Jira with these issue link settings. Okay, so here's that form, but oh great, the good news is I don't have to fill this out every time something like this happens. I can automate the creation of these things. I can set the priority as, maybe this is the highest priority. I can determine who the assignee is. And, when it says no options, feel free to type and you'll see some options within here. And I can fill that in. And now, once I've created that issue alert, I now have confidence that my issue are going to be, when issue comes in, it's going to show up in my review list as a new issue, or as let's say I do choose a regression. So the issue changes state from resolved to uninstalled. So a regression happened. I know that it happened in this environment with this particular area, and an issue is created in Jira, and it's present in my issues list for review. And now my life is much easier. So that's the value of some of these optimizations that Sentry is making within workflow, is being able to go from having an issue be reported to having it knowing that there's a plan in place for doing that. Sentry helped us cut through the noise. It helps automate our triage tasks. It allows us to focus on what we want to do, and focus our attention in areas where we want to focus, which are things like building new features or learning how to kite surf. So we come to review, and we just walk through the unignored items, as we takes a little time to load for all my projects within the last few days. Let's see if we can accelerate this. Okay, there we go. And I can come in here and hover over the stack trace, see what I want to do. I can take action from here and choose resolve. Of course, these are the standard workflow functions that you may be familiar with. Resolve that in this issue. And I can mark this as reviewed and say, look, take this out of my review list. I figured it out. I know I don't want to see that. Next time I have a plan for it. I can choose to ignore a certain issue and ignore for a time, ignore for the number of times this happens, ignore for the additional X number of users, or I could just say, hey, I don't want to see this issue again. So now I have full control of my issues. Again, just to reiterate, the For Review tab is here to focus your attention on the issues that you need to pay attention to and to achieve kind of an inbox zero, if you will, within the Sentry product. So great. Except now other people want to know how the project is performing. People are asking me, questions all the time about this. And before, we had, information about projects and surfaced in various areas. You had the issues to show information about the errors within a project. You had performance to show you information about the performance items within the project. We had releases to show you information about what releases were involved in a project. But now with people asking me these questions, I don't want to pull all that information together. So Sentry has introduced the idea of project details. And project details is going to consolidate all of that information, all of the information around your project within one single view to give you an overview of what's going on. I have an overview of my crash-free sessions, so I know, and number of releases, so I know how my release velocity is doing. And I have an overview of app decks, so I know, what does the performance look like and have changes been made. I have graphs that I can manipulate, see the number of errors, and I can see how that performance is comparing to the prior amount of time. So this is the last 14 days, and this is performance in the prior 14 days. I have frequently unhandled issues. So these are the issues that I should really focus on in this project and probably figure out a plan for. And then I have links to the latest releases in this project, as well as the latest alerts that have been triggered for this project. So cool, everything has been centralized and consolidated in one single area. Now I can pass this off to my manager. I can pass this off to my product owner. I can pass this off to my Scrum Master and be like, hey, leave me alone. If you want to know about the project, go take a look at this. And then you can ask me interesting questions. So cool, that's this is how we consolidate this information. But what if we wanted to have a different view? What if I don't want to focus on a project, but I want to focus on a certain area? So one of the final improvement that I want to talk about really quickly is dashboards and the introduction of custom dashboards. And if you come into your dashboards area, you'll see this default dashboard here, and we're providing you a number of visualizations and ways to surface information. So you kind of already have some visualizations based on project, based on issues, based on releases, based on performance. But let's say that I actually wanted to focus on an API endpoint, for example. One thing I could do, because it is come and create a new dashboard, I'll title this My Important API, and I will focus, now I will add some widgets. And let's say that I want to see what the total count of errors is, and that's a number. And this is going to be error.type is, and you'll notice that there's a number of error types. We want, or let's say event.type. Because what we want is to not have transactions, which is everything else, right? And so now I can show the count, but what if this is for that project? So let's add another level to this and say that transaction contains checkout. And now I'm seeing that my checkout API has this error count. Okay, cool. So what about that? That's the total number of errors. What about the unique number of issues that are out there, right? So let's go into unique. Big number. We want that same, not event.type. I got to copy this. Transaction and transaction checkout. Just focus on that one. So now I can see what the unique number is within this. Oh yeah, I need to unique error. So I'll add that. And now let's say that I want to know what how the impacted users are. Users, and come in here, and again, big number, use that, count, unique, user. And now I can see how many users are impacted. I can come and add some lines and say this is errors over time. And again, have my same query, but I'm going to count those. And then maybe I'd like to also count the number of add the unique users within there, and just customize my my visualization to not focus, save and finish. Now I'm not focusing on a project. I'm not focusing on a release. I'm focusing on an API and gathering all the information that's relevant to that API into a single cohesive location, and can then get that information to anybody that's important. So there you go. We talked a little bit about how Sentry has improved our lives by adding review list, adding automated ticket generation, adding new visualizations so that we're surfacing the information that you need and you want, and making it easy to get answers to people so you can focus on building features and learning to kite surf or whatever you want to do this summer. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Don.
Hey, thanks. That was pretty exciting. There's a lot of really good features in there. I really like, I like how you're focusing on the inbox zero. I thought that was really cool because that's something that I'm a huge fan of, not only with email, but for other things. And Sentry was the same way. And previously, it was just a lot of ignoring or, trying to create these custom filters to make things go away. Because one of my least favorite things is where you have something where, oh crap, just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, it's all institutional knowledge. Like you have a new developer and you tell them to go to the error dashboard and you just have to, oh yeah, that's a normal one, ignore that one. No, ignore that one too, ignore that one too. And that just doesn't scale. As you add more people, as you grow, that just doesn't work. So I love how you guys are trying to find ways to get that down and make it easier to get that inbox zero so that you just point a new dev at it and say, go, keep that to zero. And it's nice and simple. That was pretty cool. The other cool thing, I don't know if I was supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways because I found your demo really exciting. I wanted to talk a little bit about it. But the other thing is the Jira issues. Like in my past life, in the job before this one, where I was a principal architect, chief architect at a place, they had a lot of devs, and we used Sentry super heavily to triage a lot of information. And our flow there was we had a really good process for dealing with Jira tickets and triaging there. So we wanted to flow everything to Jira. And so what we had to do is we had to put somebody on to check Sentry, I think 2 or 3 times a day, we told him or her, and they go to it and they have to find an issue or find a Sentry thing, click on create Jira issue, go through that field, go to the next one. And it was just so tedious to keep going. But what it did is it got us into Jira where we were doing all of our triaging and stuff like that. That was just how those processes work. So something like this where you can automatically create them, that would save that team so much time because you get the default behavior of putting them all in. You can add the labels, you can add all the different fields that look like. That's pretty exciting. Yeah. Because Sentry is cool, but all these dev tools, it's like, You spend all this time as a developer of a product of wanting to make these things that people really like, but really you do your job the best when they never have to see your tool anymore, when it just works automatically in the background and it processes things. So I thought that was really cool how you're finding ways to make it to use Sentry even less, if that makes any sense. But yet at the same time, you're super dependent on it because no one else can do this level of automation.
Right. Yeah, we don't want you to have Sentry open all the time, hitting refresh to see when issues are coming in and making you aware of that. So, further enhancements to focus you where you should have focus and just let you know when there's something that really requires your attention.
Exactly, because I think it's really a problem of scale where if you have one or two devs or it's just you, you'll figure it out. It's not that big a deal. You don't need to optimize all these things. But as you scale, as you new people and you go through an onboarding process, for example, we always had Sentry as part of a disturbed role. The idea is you always had one person on the team deal with any interruption type tasks. And one of the things they did was triage Sentry issues to take those errors and turn them into Jira issues and just keep doing that. And it was, as I said, it was very tedious. You had to do it a couple times a day. And when they didn't do it as a manager now, or as the architect, I would kind of keep an eye on it and then go bug people. Hey, I see you didn't triage the Sentry issues. It just was so tedious. And so, the more you can automate stuff, the more you can make so people don't have to think, the better off things are.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll transition from that into how I've used Sleuth, or I use Sentry now. So probably just a little bit of background on me. So as mentioned before, I'm a co-founder of a product called Sleuth, which is a tool that tracks your deployments and the impacts of deployments to let you know key metrics on how well you're doing, but also helps you find issues when they're happening and dig into them, which is kind of where it comes Sentry. So I'm actually kind of speaking with several hats. As I mentioned, I'm a big user of Sentry. I think we started using Sentry and Atlassian back, I want to say, I was trying to think of exactly, but I want to say 2015, 2016, something like that. It was pretty early on. We used it in HipChat. And then I used it in this last place, and then now we're using it here. But then my tool also integrates with Sentry. So I kind of have like three hats going. I have a user of Sentry, I have an integrator of Sentry, and then, someone wants to show you the product. So I'll kind of walk you through the process that we use in Sleuth and how we use. So I don't want to go too much into Sleuth. I might as well start sharing. Is that right, Schaefer? Yep. Okay. Just make sure I'm following the script. Script is very important. So let's start with taking a look at this, just so you can get a little bit of context. This isn't a product pitch. I'm not a product person. I'm a tech person, so I care about how things work. So this is Sleuth in a nutshell. What you're looking at here is you're looking at your project dashboard where you can see all sources of change. So Sleuth focuses on deployments because we want to know what changed, whether that's a feature flag. You can see there's a feature flag change here, whether that's a code change, a Terraform change, whatever. We look at all types of changes to production, and then we track the impact of that. And that's where Sentry comes in. So I'll dive into that part. So where it usually starts from a developer standpoint is in the deploy channel. So what Sleuth will do is it tracks the deployments, but it also tracks the impact of deployment. So if the deployment's healthy or not, and it'll let you know when it's not healthy. So just as a fortuitous situation, the very last deployment that we did, the last code deployment, was unhealthy. Well, it was ailing. It was kind of unhealthy. And so how we knew that is a couple things. One is Sleuth will send a message to the deployment channel saying the deployment happened, but then it'll also update it if it detects an unhealthy thing. And it also messages the developer themselves, so the developer knows that the change they just pushed to production is unhealthy. So if I'm looking at the channel, I say, hey, this deployment is unhealthy. What's going on? I can see a description. In this case, Sentry errors. We had 6 Sentry errors because, again, I'm a big believer in inbox zero type thing, and I try to keep those things pretty buttoned down. So if I click on the issue, I'll switch over to Firefox here. And what you're looking at here is you're looking at the deployment details. So what Sleuth does is it looks in all the different parts of the deployment. You can see the pull requests, the commits, the issues, the files, the builds, and then impacts, which is the Sentry part. So if you see up here, Sleuth is tracking data from, we're looking at RDS stats from CloudWatch. We're looking at stuff from Datadog. We're looking at performance monitoring tools, error checking tools, all sorts of sources of impact. The one that we want to talk about most is down in Sentry. So lately it had 0 errors, but if I click on that, you'll you'll be taken to the Sentry, Sentry. And yeah, so in that very last little bit, because it was saying in that last little section of those 2 minutes, I didn't have any errors, but before there was. So let's see how good I am at manipulating this stuff on the fly. This should be fun. Okay, I'm not very good at it, but anyways, what would happen is if I had got the message in Sleuth, in Slack really, that there was an unhealthy deploy, I could click on it, go and see the exact issue, and then dive into it on the Sentry side. So I can't go into too much on Sentry just because of it shows some, oh, look, it's all unhealthy because of that. Just because I don't want to leak some customer data or whatnot. But you can kind of see that we try to keep it pretty well down. And oh, yeah. And see, I love this. This is already showing some of the new features of what you're talking about, how I can quickly see which ones I need to review. I don't need to look at all 6. I only need to see the last 3. And so I'm going to go through here and say, okay, it looks like we do need to do some triaging. Those are 28, 24, 23 hours ago, but still we don't want to have that. So I like how already it's cutting down some of the stuff that I need to pay attention to, because that was the big value for me of Sentry, is that it brings everything in one place. I'm looking at errors from back end, from front end, and now some of the performance stuff that you guys are doing. I can bring all of that in one place and see what is the error rate, because that's one of the key things about a service. What's the error rate? I can see that immediately, and I can see details of that in one spot instead of having to go to 3 different tools. So that's super helpful for me. Now, I could go on and on, but I don't want to monopolize the webinar. This is your webinar, not mine. Where do you want to go next?
I mean, yeah, keep talking. I mean, I think it's good. Keep going. If you've got more to say, otherwise,
yeah, sure.
If you've hit a conclusion, we can move on to the next section. But I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. So the Sentry thing. Yeah, I mean, I could go into some likes and dislikes. I think we're going to do that later, though. So I'll let you drive.
Yeah, that would be actually the next thing we do. So if you've wrapped up kind of everything you wanted to show, then we'd love to hear some like either feature requests. I know you had mentioned a couple things you liked right off the bat. If there's more of those, or if you want to just kind of shed some light on what we could improve on or what you would like to see, I think that'd be a good next step.
Yeah, I'll do some of the things that I've liked. So as I kind of mentioned, I like how Sentry brings all of my errors in one place from different places. That's a huge thing for a cross-functional team, because traditionally you would have a front-end team and you'd have a back-end team, and each team would have their own set of tools and their own set of things. But nowadays, more and more, we're doing cross-functional teams. So you have a team of 5 people and you have 2 front-end, 1 back-end, 1 design, maybe 1 SRE or ops type person. So the more that you can not only unify a team, but you can unify your tools, the better off that team's going to be, the more effective, and the more it's going to facilitate communication. Because anyone who's been in this industry knows the real problem in software isn't technology. It's not even the tools you use. It's in communication and it's in culture. And so by using Sentry to get all of your errors in one place, that can really help facilitate discussions and a common ground between different people in your team to, again, help bring them together. So that's probably one of my favorite things about Sentry, how you can have all those errors in one place. And the other thing I just want to comment, and this is a little bit more meta, so I'm not going super feature on this one, but I think it's really, I love what you guys are doing in that you're exposing developers to how your code is working in production. This is one of our main thrusts of why we created Sleuth, is the days of a typical developer writing some code, shipping it off to another team to deploy it, and then just going home and not ever thinking about it ever again. Those days are done. The developer of today, again, not every industry, everybody's a little bit different, but the developer of today not only knows to know how their code, if it works on their machine and if it works in their CI, but they need to know how it works in production, because that creates a really critical feedback loop, so that when a developer sees, oh, okay, that created all these error cases, all those shortcuts I took when I was developing, where it's like, I'm not going to handle that error, and I'm just going to try catch, everything and call it a day. You can't do that when you understand how that works in production. And so now the developer is seeing that impact in production and is able to go and write better code from then on out. It creates a critical feedback loop for improving the quality of a team in the long run. So tools like this that expose the developer to production, super, super valuable. Something else I liked about it. So that was my Sentry customer hat on. Putting my Sentry integration hat on. One thing I really like about Sentry is how easy it is to integrate with. So, for example, as you saw, we integrated with Datadog and CloudWatch and some different Sentry competitors and all sorts of different sources of impact, because in Sleuth, we're trying to understand the impact of a deployment. And so I have a pretty good feel about which APIs are great and which ones not so great, and which ones, you look at a task and you always do an integration task. You look at it and you say, oh, 2 days to integrate this service and we're done. And some of them turn out, and you say that because some turn out to be 4 hours and some turn out to be 2 weeks. And I'm pretty happy to say that Sentry was pretty easy to do. And I guess I can kind of show you how that works just so that we have something a little bit more specific to look at. So you can see here probably my IDE, and I'm not going to go into all of this. I don't know how many of you are developers, let alone Python developers, so it probably looks Greek to many of you. But I guess what I want to point out just from a very, very simple way is how easy it was. So we have this little wrapper around Sentry to make a request. We get back some information, and it was really just one URL. If you look at this URL, we were able to get the Sentry issues for your org, do some filtering. We want to look at the project, we want to look start and end, because every 2 minutes we go out to Sentry and you say how many errors they have, and we want to track that, as I said, over time to show those little red and green pips that you saw on the top. So it's really just one query that gave us nice bucketed information. Sometimes people give you too much information, their APIs do, and you have to do a lot of processing. So I liked how easy it was. I liked the personal token approach that you had, where it was so easy to start developing. You take this personal token, you copy it in, curl statement, you're done. Now, if you want to get fancy, I believe you do support OAuth, which I'll be honest with you, I haven't quite integrated with yet because I was lazy, but it's coming, I swear. Where it's now not tied to our integration would be tied to a person, it would be tied to an application. So that's definitely the next step. But I like how Sentry's integration makes it really easy to do that. Another story on that front is Sentry recently, and I'm going to say recently, but it's not recently. Let's say, when did you guys add tracking releases? I want to say that was a year ago-ish or so. Does that sound right? Something like that. Yep. So you added the ability to track releases. And so one thing that we added to Sleuth, since Sleuth knows when you deployed your code, we report to Sentry that a code was deployed, and here's the SHA, and here's information about it. The idea being that the deployments flow into Sleuth, and they flow out to Datadog, to Sentry, to all the different places. And when I first looked at that code, I was talking to Raul at Sentry, and he was like, hey, you should integrate with this, because him and I did a video earlier. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Last minute feature request a day or two before filming of this other, of this video. That's not going to happen. But believe it or not, I was able to sit down and like, what, one evening, I'm like, I'm just going to give it a go. Let's see how hard it could be. Turned out it wasn't that hard. I was able to put it in the product and then demo it in that video, I think the next day or the day after. So again, it's not something you think about when you think about your error tool is, how well you can integrate. Usually you're thinking about, your core workflows, as you should be. You're looking at dashboards, because who doesn't love pretty colors? But the fact that the story goes all the way down to how you can integrate with it, so your developers are happy with the tool. Again, not something you think about when you're evaluating the tool, but in the end, something that will save your bacon many times. And, honestly, make you look like the hero, which, who doesn't want to be a hero? So those are, oh yeah, you wanted to reply.
I was just saying we all want to be the hero, Don.
Of course. That's why we're in this business, right? I always say it's kind of like, like in the 14th century, you had the clergy class who could, decide if you go to heaven or hell, or, and who knows how they did it. It was just magic. I feel like programmers today are kind of that magic. People don't know why their Facebook does all the things, but it does, and it works, and they love it. And thankfully they give us money. So it just, everybody wins. Everybody wins. On the improvements to make, I don't want to go too much into this just because it's usually a lot of details and it's back and forth, but I will say there's some areas around the API that I would love to see improved. For example, right now, when I make a query to get the errors for a time period, I can't filter by environment. So some of our customers have like 20 different environments, staging, prod 1, prod 2, prod 3, and they want to be able to drill down the errors for just an environment so that they can isolate, because you might have, EU1 wakes up at a certain time than the US West or something like that. So in Sentry, I can't currently put in the environment to have that filter. That would be a nice thing to do. Whenever I'm using, actually, I might as well get away from the code and go back into Firefox. Whenever I'm looking at an issue, again, I'd love to click on one, but I can't because it would leak customer data. But whenever I'm looking at this, sometimes on the issue detail page, there's so much information that it can be a little bit hard to parse. Sometimes, for example, the browser and things are really important in front end, but not important other times. That said, I want to give a call out to what you were showing, how you could do the stack traces in line in the list. That is awesome, because that's almost always the number one thing I want. I want to know what's a stack trace to quickly feel, what type of problem it is. And the fact that I can do that right in the list view and not have to drill down, wait for the page to load, scroll, find the right thing. I'm anticipating that'll be a huge time saver. So I'm really excited about that feature.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. If you saw what kind of value you saw in seeing the stack trace before you click into the issue now. Because yeah, all of us have seen the issues detail page and the message, there's the summary information and the message, and the stack trace is a little bit down there. So, you could use some scrolling exercise, but if you're dealing with a lot of issues, you don't want to do that. Now, I think the stack trace preview will really help a lot accelerate your ability to understand what happened and go from there.
Yep, exactly. It's just say anything that can save you a couple clicks. It doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're a manager in charge of a team of 5, 10, 20, hundreds, that really adds up over time. And that's not where you want your people to spend time. You want them to spend time thinking about the customer problems, the bugs, the performance issues you're dealing with. You don't want them to be screwing around with a tool waiting for stuff to load.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I guess my summary on that would be, as a user of Sentry, you might be able to tell already, I'm a big fan. I really like, and honestly, I'll be honest with you, I was a skeptic. I was not a Sentry fan in the beginning. When it first joined HipChat, for example, I don't think I looked at it more than twice, because I thought, I was under the belief, and I did this, where I would just SSH into the server. I would grep the logs. I would pull out all the errors that way, and then I would leave that tailing with this special code that I had to filter out what I wanted. It only showed what I wanted, this super custom Python script. And I was like, that's all I ever need. I don't need this Sentry thing. Which, again, goes back to the earlier point where, yeah, that might work for you, maybe, even then maybe it's debatable, but that doesn't scale. You can't tell, the new grad dev or the other person or the 100 other people or whatever it was. I think HipChat in the end had like 120 devs on it. You can't tell them all to go run this little special script. And then you look at what Sentry adds, where it, the grouping and some of the intelligent stuff, where it tries to minimize the noise, tries to pull out the signal, and you start to really understand the value. So I'm a big fan of the tool as a user. From a Sleuth side, I'm a big fan. As you said, you can look at so much. The fact that I can drill down exactly into these errors really helps you out, because when you get a message from Sleuth that says your deployment's unhealthy, it's a little bit of panic, like, crap, what did I break? And the fact that I can just in a couple clicks go from Slack to Sleuth to Sentry to find that out, or if it's one of the other ones, but if it's a Sentry one, to go right into it. Not every tool we found had the ability to create a link that went directly to what you needed. We really like that about Sentry as well, as I could have that link, which would go exactly the time frame of those problems, and it would go right to it. So we found, from integrating from a Sleuth standpoint, we could really provide that. And actually, one last point on that. So what Sleuth tries to do is, by tracking it, and we also try to pay a lot of attention to the metrics, a particular change failure rate and mean time to recovery, which is part of the DORA or Accelerate metrics. I know that's a whole other topic. But I will say that when you talk to customers, one of their biggest challenges is how they measure errors, how they measure failure, because you can't have a mean time to failure if you don't really know what a failure is. And Sentry is a huge part of that solution. It takes something which is, we get a lot of spam in the logs. Is that a big deal? I don't know. And it gives you the tools to intelligently whittle that down to pull out the signal to see, yes, this is an issue, or no, this is not. Previously, just through displaying a lot, and now it looks like with a lot more automation. So if you're a team out there and you're looking to track your metrics, obviously consider Sleuth, but a key part of that solution is going to be using Sentry to better understand your errors and track that over time.
Very cool, Don. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks both of you all. This has been a very great discussion, conversation. It's great having you on, Don. I want to jump into, we've got about 14 minutes left here just to jump into some questions that we've got. So I'll just dive right in. On the Sentry side, whether it's Adi or Richard, just feel free to grab these questions as they come. I won't ask them specifically at you. The first one, someone asked, what do you do with issues like the one I see now? So I think this was at the beginning, Richard, when you were showing there was a 500 error on Axios. They ended up being all in the same issue, but there may be many reasons we got a 500 error in the first place.
Yeah, so a couple things. I think I saw somebody reply that there's a way that you can make more sense of what that stack trace is. So that might be an interesting thing to look at, some plugin into the code. I'm not on mute, am I?
No, you're good.
No, you're good.
Otherwise, you guys would be yelling at me. But then, as in terms of from Sentry side, take a look at the custom fingerprints and the stack trace, custom stack trace stuff to figure out if there's any frames that you can remove or indicate that are in app, and focus the grouping on those things. That would be how we would recommend you approach that.
Cool. How might using Sentry affect my application speed?
So it shouldn't affect your application speed, right? Sentry is designed to be unobtrusive into your code base. It's designed to be asynchronous in communication, and users shouldn't notice when anything happens. So if they do, yeah, we'd love to hear about that.
I'll just throw a little bit of color on top of that. So when we used it at HipChat was dealing in, I forget the exact numbers, but it was like tens of thousands of messages, maybe it was in a second or a minute or some crazy number like that. It was just flooding with so much information. And we used Sentry and reported errors. That never, ever showed up. If we looked into different performance initiatives, Sentry was never showing up anywhere. So I can say with confidence that it won't be a problem.
Awesome.
I think this one was related to the auto ticket creation for Jira. Is Bitbucket supported for this too?
So we talked about a couple features that did integrations with like source control and issue creation. Let's talk about that really quickly. So in terms of the stack trace preview and stack trace linking, that's currently supported in GitHub and GitLab, GitHub Enterprise and GitLab. So stay tuned for other things. In terms of automated issue creation, we are supporting that with Jira and Azure DevOps. And again, we are continuing to add support for other integrations as time goes on. So that's where it stands.
Cool. Someone says, I can't see the stack trace. Is it in a gradual release?
So I assume you mean stack trace preview. First, you're not going to see stack traces on issues that don't have them. And some languages don't have those, or some languages or SDKs report issues that don't have stack traces. It should be visible and available now. It's in general release. So if there's no stack trace, we do tell you that within the UI.
Cool. Someone asked, I'd like to have a link to my IDE. Can I configure it on Sentry?
That's cool. Yeah, we don't have any out-of-the-box IDE integrations right now, but you can create a custom integration using the integration platform, which I think Don has a lot of experience doing. Very cool. And I don't know if your IDE is hosted, is it like a SaaS-based IDE, or if it's on your local machine, but yeah, right now we don't have any.
Cool. Next question. I use Sentry to log errors from my plugin extension. I noticed that most errors from other websites that use my plugin. How do I use Sentry properly to track issues related to my plugin?
Okay, so this is probably related to SDK configuration. You want to make sure that you configure the SDK so only errors from your extension space are surfaced. Take a look at allow URL and maybe even before send. Before send allows you to intercept messages before, after they happen and before they get sent up to Sentry, so you can manipulate them or filter them accordingly.
Possible to run Sentry on your own machine server like Graylog?
Yeah, if you want to go for that, absolutely. We have a self-hosted, self-managed, open source. Go to github.com/getsentry. Take a look at it.
Looks like this one was answered in chat. Let's ask it out loud, though, just so everyone gets a chance to hear the answer. See all of these settings somewhere.
Sorry, I'm not sure. What is there something I should respond to?
I think Audie, can you take this one about? I think you answered it in chat. Maybe
Yeah, sure.
Someone on our site.
So the alert conditions, they're currently officially available only through the UI. So you can't actually upload a config file or something that contains all the conditions, but you can make API calls. It's the same API that our front-end React app uses. We haven't documented it yet because we do make backward and compatible changes to it, but that's pretty rare. So the API is fairly stable right now if you want to use that to manage your alert rules.
Cool.
Thanks, Audie.
Someone says, I love the automatic Jira ticket creation. We've been wanting that for a long time. Can reporter be set to Sentry, or do we still need to choose a specific user?
Yeah, so as it stands right now, a specific user does need to be created within Sentry to be that reporter. I haven't tried this, but maybe you could create a Sentry user and then use that as a reporter.
Any plans to add support for other issue tracking software besides Jira, such as Clubhouse? I think we've linked. If we didn't link in the chat, I'll send this URL out to everyone so you can just see.
Yeah, the integrations URL, great. Yeah, we have a bunch, and if we don't support it, we have an integrations platform again that you can hook it up with. And as mentioned, most integrations are available and self-hosted. And where they aren't, the docs say so. But yeah, stay tuned. I don't think we announce what integrations are coming.
On the integration, I just wanted to say one thing real quickly. Actually, when I joined Sleuth, we were using a competitor, and we're actually pretty happy with the competitor, with the exception of their integrations. So specifically, their Jira integration wasn't very good. It was pretty slow, and it didn't let you configure some of the things and remember some of the defaults that I remembered from my previous job using Sentry. And I'm like, no, it was good over here in Sentry. And it was such a pain point that we ended up switching over to Sentry, which turned out to be rather fortuitous, because then we moved to Linear for issue tracking, and you had a Sentry integration for Linear as well. So that was pretty exciting.
Nice. Cool. Pertaining to dashboards, are they available in the free plan?
Yeah, there's a read-only version of dashboards, version 2, which is available to previous and new pricing tiers. The full version is only available to the current business plan and up. Please contact us to get that.
Yep, and you can always try the business plan. If you haven't trialed it yet, there's a trial for you.
Yeah.
Can you query for assigned in a dashboard widget? I'd like to create a dashboard for errors assigned to a specific team.
Yeah, they're not today. That's on the roadmap. It's on our radar.
Cool. Is there a way to group or break down an issue by extra parameters? For example, a graph of the % of errors having a specific value on extra param.
Yeah, so this I think is one of the valuable features of Sentry, is the ability to filter and get very specific based on all the structured and indexed information that we have within the issue. So, anything you can query and discover, like tags and attributes and so on, can be used to break down an issue. Extra data that's added via context and additional data and that kind of thing, those are not indexed within Sentry and cannot be used for breakdowns. So if it's important for you to filter on, important for you to slice in, find a way to get it into a tag. That's my recommendation.
Sentry breadcrumbs, upload all logs, and it's affecting startup time. Is there any alternative?
Yeah, so Sentry breadcrumbs will upload the relevant and the latest logs, not everything that exists out there. That's the default behavior of the SDK. You can filter breadcrumbs as well as disable them if you want to or need to. If that's affecting startup time, I'd probably look in the SDK to find a way to with it in it or something to figure out how to do that.
Great. We're closing in on time here. I do want to ask one more question. Are all the issue tracker integrations, Jira, Asana, are those available from the hosted version of Sentry as well?
So most integrations are available on self-hosted, and where they aren't, like Clubhouse and Linear, the integration docs say so. So I would, go reference the documentation to find out specifically.
Got it. Well, that's all for today. I want to thank Don for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. Thanks everyone who attended. We will send out a recording via email by next Monday, and some links to documentation related to some of the questions that were asked today. So until then, and until next month for our next workshop, everyone take care, and we'll see you again soon. Don't forget to answer that one question survey after you leave the meeting. We really appreciate it.